And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Neil Tyra. So Neil, Neil, thanks for squeezing me in and being a guest on my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Well, you're welcome. It's going to be a great conversation. Neil he's an attorney. I mean, he's done like 3 or 4 other careers before he became an attorney, but he specializes, I love his website, estate planning for regular folks. He does adoptions and adult guardianship and things. But he also, we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the other thing that he does with his own podcast called the Law Entrepreneur Podcast, really helping attorneys and lawyers understand what they didn't teach you in law school about running a business. So that is really intriguing to me because I work with a lot of attorneys and just business owners in general who, as I tell them, Neil, they're experts at what they do. But from my world, they've not been schooled in marketing. And so we come alongside and help them with marketing. Same thing with what you're doing. So tell us just a snapshot of your career. I mean, you've done like 4 or 5 different things. But let's start there. How did you get to where you are today, man?
Yeah, so I like to tell people, well, I don't tell people that law is my 4th career. And that's largely because I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I just keep changing my mind as to, what where my life is going to go. I originally started cooking for a living, which made my mother very happy because she knew then that I would not ever starve, and I've proven that. Then just clearly not starving. And then I built large software and hardware systems for the government and principally NASA and DoD. So helped in the space program, doing a job that I told people I literally would have done for free. It was so interesting and exciting. I did that for 20 plus years. All along the way, I was a practicing martial artist. And when I left my last assignment at Computer Science Corporation, one of my black belts said, well, why don't we just open up a commercial martial arts studio? Because we've been teaching in clubs and things like that. And so that's what we did. We started the Kenshin Karate School and built that business up. And after 12 years of that, my body was starting to tell me that after 25 years of martial arts, it was time to slow down that part of my world a little bit. And I'd always had an interest to go to law school. And I had a couple of friends who went to law school later in life, and they served as role models. And so I said, well, let me just see if I don't even know how to get into law school. Let me find out what's the process. And so I applied to the local law schools here in the Washington, D.C. area. I wasn't going to travel anywhere. And I figured if one of them would have me, then I have a decision to make. And I was lucky enough that the Columbus School of Law at the Catholic University of America accepted my application. And so now I had a decision to make. I had 2 children that were growing up, and I knew they were going to start sucking up a lot more money. So I better get in front of that now. And so I found a willing buyer for the martial arts studio, and I sold that, and that paid for me to go to law school. So I treated law school as a full-time job. I went there, I basically arrived at 8:30 in the morning, and I left at 5:30 in the evening, and came home, had dinner with the family, did a little more work, and rinsed and repeat for the next 3 years, and was lucky enough to graduate. I won't say I graduated with honors, because it had been 11 years since I had been in college, and I was on the 11-year undergraduate program. Yeah. So I'm kind of a slow learner. But I did graduate. I over prepared for the bar exam because I said to myself, I'm only going to take it once. Okay. If it doesn't work, I'll go find something else to do. So I passed the bar, went to work for a small boutique law firm. And then my son at that time, pretty significant athlete. I knew he had a chance to start varsity in 2 different sports. As a freshman, I wanted to be able to watch him wrestle and play soccer without having to ask anybody for permission. So I said, well, I've already started and sold a business. Well, I'm just going to go into practice on my own. How difficult could it be?
Right.
I've already made every mistake that one could have made. Little did I know that there was an enormous amount of new mistakes to make, which I promptly made. And so, but I started my own practice. And about that time, and I was a podcast junkie all along. I listened to a lot of podcasts. And about that time, one of my classmates, one of the young kids, they were all young to me because I was the oldest one.
Right. Exactly.
In the class. But one of the young kids got himself disbarred from the practice of law for screwing up financial accounts. And I started kind of asking around about how could that be, because everybody knows that the quickest way to get disbarred is to screw up your escrow or trust account. And what I found out, that the vast majority of people that I graduated with had never even had a checking account. They'd always, worked off of a debit card.
Yes.
And so they'd never written a check. And I asked my own son, he'd never written a check. I thought, well, I'm failing as a parent there.
Wow.
And so I said, well, come to think about it, when I think back on law school, they didn't teach us anything about running a business. They didn't teach us how to manage your trust account or how to handle the finances of a law firm. They didn't teach us how to market a law firm or how to staff a law firm or how to hire people or how to budget for expenses. And so I said, that's an area where I think I could provide some value. And at the time, frankly, to be honest with you, I was working with a couple of coaches. I was less than thrilled with what I was getting out of that experience. And so I figured if I started a podcast where I interview smart people, if I did it for 3 to 6 months, which is about the average length of a podcast lifetime in those days, it's actually gone down now because there's so many more and so many fall by the wayside. I think the average is about 4 months now for a podcast. I said, well, if I do it for 3 or 6 months, I'll interview a bunch of interesting people, hopefully smarter than me. Hopefully some of that will rub off and I'll be better for the experience. Little did I know that there was such a demand for what we had to offer and what we were discussing. And that was over 5 years ago. We're now at episode 312. So I've got, pretty close to 350 hours worth of content out there about how to start a solo practice or grow your practice, and addressing the question what they didn't teach us in law school about running a business.
That's awesome. Man, that is so needed, whether you're an attorney like what you work with or just business owners in general.
Well, the funny thing is that, about 6 months into it, I got feedback from a dentist who said, we love your podcast. And I said, well, just humor me a bit. Tell me, why are you listening to a podcast about starting a law practice? He said, well, if you think they taught us how to run a dental practice in dental school, I got a bridge to sell you.
Yeah.
And what I found out, that there's a fair number of our listeners who are dentists, doctors, and chiropractors, a lot of chiropractors, because they face the same challenges, the same issues. Yeah. They're trying to run a professional services business where they know how to drill teeth and how to take your temperature and how to manipulate your spine, but they may not know how to go about marketing their services.
Right. Yeah. And that's a whole school of thought in and of itself of how do you do it right? What are some of the things, how do you keep from chasing those next shiny objects that you have to be on Clubhouse and TikTok? And so let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, so what are some common myths or concerns you hear, and how do you help people reorient their thinking, first of all, around marketing and some strategies.
Well, I think that the most significant hurdle to overcome is to get attorneys to accept the fact that their business is just like any other business. You know, attorneys, for all of the things that we're known for, mostly bad, some good, um, they all seem to think their law practice is unique, that it's different. It's not, I'm not selling widgets. I'm not, you know, offering up food dishes on a daily basis. I'm selling legal services, and that's different. Well, it's not really. Okay, it's just you. You need customers, i.e., clients. You need staff, i.e., employees. You need recognition, i.e., branding.
Mhm.
And so you have to go about and make sure all of that is taken care of. And whether you do it yourself or you delegate it, that you know, that's the $64,000 question.
Right.
But it has to be done.
Absolutely. It does. Yeah. And we tell business owners a lot of times that at the beginning, you're probably doing a lot of that yourself, but then you've got to reach that point that whether it's a tipping point or a fun or a bottleneck or something, to realize you can't do it all yourself. You need to find resources, partners to help you. And a lot of times it's finding coaches like you to go, okay, what have you learned? I don't want to make all the mistakes you've made, dude. Help me navigate this a lot faster.
Right, for sure. And you know, in the beginning, you have more time than money.
Right.
So you have the time to do all these things. And it's important, in my opinion, that you would at least take a stab at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when it comes to marketing, for instance, I want to at least take a stab at trying to understand what might work for me. Do I feel comfortable with, you know, digital marketing? Do I feel comfortable with content marketing? Do I feel comfortable with traditional print slash advertising, which don't do that, marketing, um, direct mail? You kind of figure out what works for you or what you're comfortable with, so that when you start to refine that and scale it and find somebody who can do it for you, delegate it, you're not operating from a point of not knowing what you're talking about, because that's when you get taken advantage of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I remember I had an office mate who said, I just paid this company several $1,000s to put up my website. Okay. And I'm so excited about it. And they charged him several $1,000s to create that website. And he said, but the phone's not ringing. Okay, well, how do people know your website is there?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I thought you just put a website up and people find it. Well, no, that's not how it works.
Doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work. And so he had not done that minimum amount of research or experiential learning to know that you got to do more than just put the site up.
That's right.
You know, and that's a perfect example.
Well, yeah, and I'd love people to go to your website, the on the legal side, because you've done a really good job on your website, and you do some things that we tell our clients that they should do, but I see a lot of people not doing it. So number one, you speak in normal language, right?
Yep.
Number two, your about page was phenomenal. You start out saying, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and oh yeah, by the way, I can do attorney stuff, right? Something like that. But you've got pictures of your wife and your kids and your dogs and stuff. And then down there way below, you're like, well, here's the other stuff. And it's so well done, because it's like, you're a real person. And then I checked out some of your videos, and dude, you're just kind of like sitting in your office going, okay, today we're going to talk about the 3 mistakes people make in creating a will. But it's not Hollywood production. It's you being you. And I connected with you. And most people don't do that.
Well, I'll tell you, I had some good coaching in that respect. And I remember one of my first coaches, who's no longer with us, rest his soul, said to me, the vast majority of people can't tell one attorney from another. They don't know who's good. I mean, yeah, everybody went to undergrad school, everybody went to law school, everybody did some kind of job that sounds like something we heard about on Law and Order.
Right.
Everybody, kisses babies and loves puppies, but they can't tell you from the next guy. Okay. And so if they can't relate to you, how are they going to choose which attorney to retain? Same is true with plumber. If they can't tell one plumber from the other, what are they going to use to make that decision? They're going to price shop. They're going to look for the lowest price or the person that's most convenient in terms of location. So what I wanted to do is say, have somebody visit my website and say, that's somebody that I think I can work with, that I feel like he speaks to me, or he's not some highfalutin suit. I don't wear coat and tie in any of my videos. I pretty much don't wear a coat and tie ever anymore. and during COVID, it's a real challenge to make sure I have pants on. But that does resonate with people, and I appreciate you providing that feedback, because that's what I get all the time. And look, I have an extraordinarily beautiful wife and two really photogenic children. My daughter's an actress in Hollywood. My son's a stud, and so I'm going to use their images.
Absolutely, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. But it's just, it's those little things that, one of the pieces of advice I always give people is just be yourself, and if I like you, I'm more interested or more likely to take steps toward you.
More inclined to work with you. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, there may be somebody who says, oh, he doesn't wear a suit and a tie. Well, great. Repel that person, because we're not going to be a good fit anyway.
No.
But this is who you get. And so many times we hide behind what we think we're supposed to be. And that just kills your marketing, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So it's funny. You and I say a lot of the same things, which is why one reason I wanted you on my podcast, so my audience can hear from another voice. But you work with attorneys, helping them really understand that aspect of it's not. I mean, you help them with marketing ideas, but you help them with other aspects as well, right? Because my lane is credibility marketing, but you are much more holistic in the counsel and things that you bring to attorneys.
Well, yeah, for one thing, owing to the fact that I've had 4 careers, and a significant part of 2 of them when I was building hardware and software systems for the government, and when I managed my own martial arts studio, both were highly reliant on technology. And so I'm a tech weenie from way back. I'm an original Apple fanboy. Mm-hmm. I bought my first Macintosh computer sight unseen when the ad came out in Time magazine. I said, oh my God, I need to have one of those. And I lugged that thing around. I wish I still had that 128K Macintosh, which is, you can put the power of about 1,000 of them on your phone now.
Right. Oh,
but in those days, that was a 20-pound thing.
The little thing. Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah. So, so I've always heavily invested and been centered on technology. And one of the things that lawyers in particular held out as a virtue for some reason, right? They would say, I don't even know how to turn the computer on. I have people who kind of do that for me, right? Which means like, I don't know the first thing about how technology can allow me to leverage my capabilities and serve my clients in a more consistent and cost-effective manner.
Right.
And so I do a lot of work with attorneys, helping them to identify what suite of products best suit their needs. And so we always have a lot of fun. I mean, a third of my guests on my podcast are what I call gadget folks. People have a product or a service to sell to attorneys, and we want to make sure that it's not a 30-minute infomercial
Right.
for their product. So we really talk about what is the need that the attorney has, and then how does this product help solve that. And we have a lot of great response to that kind of approach.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, from an attorney's perspective, it's very confusing if you're not running a CRM system or you don't have the right banking system, or how do you put all that together where somebody like you who's been there, you've built, you're like, oh, I speak of this language.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm stunned, frankly. I tell this story all the time. I'm stunned about how many attorneys don't have accounting software.
Yeah.
Like, how do you maintain your books? Oh, well, I keep a paper ledger. Oh my goodness.
Really?
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Oh no. Yeah. That.
Okay.
So you mentioned a bit ago about staying, CRM systems, how to stay in touch over time with your prospects through email and video. Many don't have that. It's like, wait, how do you function?
For sure.
Yeah. So it's finding people like you, listening to the Law Entrepreneur podcast, and just realizing there's a wealth of information out there, which is great. We've got to start there. But the next step is really finding somebody that they can connect with and say, can we have a conversation? Can you help? Because it becomes so overwhelming. What I find in working with clients is they stagnate.
Yeah.
It just stops them in their tracks and they don't do anything.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges is, at least in the legal space now, is you can't swing a dead cat without knocking over 5 legal coaches.
Yes.
So there's a lot of folks in the coaching space that have opinions to offer and services to provide. You got to find which one works for you, resonates with you, focus on the same kinds of things that you are. If you got a coach who's advocating, as an example, search engine optimization as the panacea for making sure you drive traffic to your website, but the effort and the cost of doing so is not something that you're comfortable with, then working with that coach is a non-starter.
Right.
If you got a coach that says content marketing, making videos, writing blog posts, social media, we'll talk about social media too in a second, if that resonates with your coach and that resonates with you, you found a fit.
Right.
And that's what you had. Yeah. Attorneys were also really, really slow to take up social media because they're like, I'm an attorney. I'm not going to sit around on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not going to do Twitter where people are telling me what they had for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what we found is that the younger attorneys who were coming into the marketplace, who grew up on social media and just recognized right away that if they're going to start a practice, they're going to use social media to leverage their presence amongst their tribe.
Absolutely.
Then they were killing it.
Yeah.
And the older attorneys like, well, okay, maybe I'll get a LinkedIn account. Can you help me?
Right.
Okay. So attorneys have been dragged kicking and screaming into the modern era of websites and social media presence. And now you're seeing a lot of attorneys with TikTok channels.
Right.
Which is it's inspiring. So
yeah. Well, it is, because all of those channels are productive when you use them properly, and your audience is everywhere. They're on all of these channels, but it goes back to what you said. And I love that you said is which one resonates with you, right?
Yeah.
And go with that one, because your audience is everywhere, and you don't have to be, and you don't have the money to be everywhere.
No.
Find 1 or 2 channels or whatever and dominate that. Do it well. Be yourself, and your business is going to grow, and you're going to get referrals because people like you, right?
Yeah, I think when my practice took off, when it started to become much more viable, is when I really niched down, to who I wanted to serve. It wasn't what I wanted to do, it was who I wanted to serve. And so my local town here has 300,000 or 400,000 people in it. That's enough. I can find enough clients there. I don't need to market myself in the far-flung regions of the state. So I started as close to my own home as possible. I started marketing in the neighborhood, and then in the subdivision, and then gradually increased it. And that's when I started to really attract a lot of clients.
Yeah, it's brilliant, because people don't think about that, because everybody thinks you have to have this massive audience.
They start off with the front and they say, if I have a bigger funnel,
Yeah.
okay, then there's going to be more clients that fall out the bottom. And what it is you spend a lot more time fussing around in that funnel.
That's right.
I call it a spiral drain. It's not a funnel.
It's called a toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I made my funnel smaller.
Yeah.
And it was much more effective.
Well, it is. And the last thing I want to talk about here before we bail is in all of that, you're not saying it, but you are in between the lines. And if you go to your website, you'll connect, is that smaller neighborhood, community is relationships. And I see that missing in so much marketing, but especially with an attorney, high trust,
has to be there.
Yeah. And you build that through relationships. And I see it missing so much.
Yeah.
So appreciate you talking about
it. It could not be more accurate.
Right. Yeah. And I'm convinced you're going to get more referrals from people when you're the relational person and they connect with you than probably any money you spend on the front end.
I'll tell you one other quick point
Sure.
For your listeners. One of the things that attorneys, and I think other professional services firms don't do enough of, is the care and feeding of their past client, their former clients.
Absolutely.
We do a client appreciation cocktail party where we invite them to my home. Okay. And just because we've spent all this time getting to know each other and working with each other, and I appreciate their support. So come sit around the house and have an adult beverage, or a beverage of your choosing.
Right.
Meet some other clients, some neighbors, some friends. I don't think people do enough of that.
I think
and
you're
now,
right.
Of course, obviously during COVID, that was really very difficult.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
So no question about that.
Yeah.
But it's starting to get better, and I think more businesses could do more of that.
Yes.
A good friend of mine, Joey Coleman, wrote a book called Never Lose a Customer Again, one of the greatest books ever written on the client experience. Mm-hmm. And he makes a huge point about, working with your past clients, because they're your ambassadors. They're your raving fans.
They are.
And I don't think enough businesses, pay attention to that.
I totally agree. I tell people, business owners, that 70 to 90% of your marketing is going to be front end. How do I get new leads? That leaves what, 10% for back end, and you probably aren't doing much there. Let's turn the dials a little bit and spend more on that back end, the nurture, but the repeat business, the all of that, and you're going to get so much more business long term. It's mind blowing to me how many people don't do that. So I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning that, because it's so true.
Yeah.
Well, Neil, thank you. How can people find you? What's the best thing? Is it your podcast? Is a website? If somebody's out there saying, I just want to learn more about you.
Yeah. So, from a legal standpoint, tyralawfirm.com, TYRA lawfirm.com. You can go there and find out all about our practice. From the podcast perspective, it's The Law Entrepreneur, all one word, thelawentrepreneur.com. Hardest part is learning how to spell entrepreneur.
That's right.
And but you can find us there, and you can search on either Neil Tyra or The Law Entrepreneur on just about every social media platform, and you can find us that way.
Awesome. And I'm going to have all of that in the show notes as well, so you can just go there. But Neil, thanks. You've been just a wealth of knowledge, information, a lot of fun to talk to, and you're helping a lot of people. I appreciate it.
Great, Michael. Thanks so much for having me on, and best of luck with the podcast and all that you do out in the community.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Have a great week.
You too.